Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're breaking down the anatomy of a climax, specifically analyzing a five-line micro-mystery. That's right, in its original text, this entire story is exactly 5 lines long. Let's dive right in and see exactly how an author builds a total masterpiece of suspense, isolation, and unresolved tension with, honestly, microscopic precision. So, the story kicks off with this line, which translates to, in the camera's final recording, only one sound is heard. Talk about a cold open, right? I mean, there is absolutely no backstory here, zero character introductions. We, the audience, are instantly shoved into the role of a forensic investigator reviewing evidence after the fact. And you've got to notice that specific phrase, final recording. Right away, that implies absolute finality. Something happened to this camera, or, the poor person holding it, that completely stopped any future recordings. It sets up this deep, unshakable sense of isolation and intense suspense, literally out of the gate. We're essentially staring at a digital artifact of a doomed event, and our attention is forcefully funneled down to anticipate one single isolated auditory clue.
And then we get that sound. In the original text, it's captured with the onomatopoeia dong, 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 which translates perfectly to the slow, incredibly heavy, echoing toll of a bell. Dong, dong, dong. Now take a look at the ellipses here. The pacing of the text just deliberately hits the brakes. As we read this, or, as we imagine hearing it echoing out of our speakers, the rhythm actually forces us to wait. It creates this vast, empty, totally nerve-wracking space between each strike. We are not looking at some chaotic, fast-paced action sequence here. No way. It's an eerie, rhythmic, and highly calculated auditory cue. It builds pure dread. It's like the sound of a clock striking midnight, or maybe a massive warning bell in some desolate, abandoned place. The author is using this one simple sound to stretch time and physically drag us deeper into the mystery's atmosphere.
So, how does this all fit together? Well, within this microscopic amount of text, the author relies on a highly systematic 3-step progression. Step 1, the camera records. This is the setup, establishing the objective medium and the context of the evidence. Then, Step 2, the sound rings. This is the sensory escalation, where that slow echoing bell shifts our focus away from the visual reality of a digital camera and into this unseen, ominous, expansive environment. And finally, Step 3, the voice speaks. This is the ultimate psychological payoff. By structuring the information exactly like this, the author is systematically narrowing our focus, almost like a funnel. We go from the wide objective concept of a camera recording a room down to a single echoing sound vibrating in that room, and finally down to the intimate, terrifying presence of a single voice. It's just an incredibly brilliant, efficient use of narrative architecture.
Okay, so how do we transition from that cold mechanical sound to the actual human element? The text reads, then, very slowly, a voice. I want you to really notice that specific modifier there, very slowly. Just like the ellipses they use for the bell toll, these words are actively manipulating our internal pacing as we read. The author is literally commanding us to slow down our own cognitive processing. Think about it. A voice speaking very slowly in a dark, isolated setting carries immense psychological weight. It suggests absolute, terrifying control. Whoever or whatever is speaking isn't panicked. They aren't rushing. They are completely dominating the space. This instantly flips the whole power dynamic of the scene. The mechanical, objective lens of the camera is suddenly completely overpowered by this deliberate, almost mocking human presence. And that brings us to a really brilliant structural contrast hidden right inside the source material. On one side of the coin, we have mechanical fact, the camera recording a concrete event. A camera is a totally objective witness, right? It captures exactly what is physically there, totally devoid of emotion or agenda or bias. But on the exact opposite side, we have abstract intent, the subjective, almost metaphysical nature of the unseen speaker. This voice isn't just making a random sound on a tape. It is making a philosophical demand about the very nature of the mystery itself. So we're moving sharply from hard evidence, a final digital recording meant to uncover the truth, straight into the realm of pure psychological manipulation. The author is essentially pitting our basic human desire for objective truth against an entity that just flatly refuses to be quantified, captured, or understood. It's fascinating.
And then that entity delivers this absolutely chilling line: "Let some mysteries remain mysteries." Wow. This is the climax of our five-line story, and it hits with staggering force. Think about what's fundamentally happening here for a second. The entire premise of a found footage or camera recording setup is the unspoken promise of an answer. We expect to see what happened to the victim. We expect the recording to solve the puzzle. But instead, the voice directly addresses that expectation and just violently denies it. It's a complete psychological denial of resolution. The speaker is essentially looking right through the lens of that doomed camera, right at the investigator, right at us, the audience, and telling us to back off. It rips all the power away from the observer. It forces us to actively embrace the unknown, rather than just passively consuming a neatly packaged answer. Which honestly makes the story's conclusion almost darkly comedic in its execution. The end. I mean, look at the stark irony of those two words. Structurally, the text is formally declaring that the narrative is over. It abruptly and firmly terminates the story, but practically, the actual mystery has just been blown wide open. We don't know who owned the camera. We have no idea where that massive bell was ringing, and we certainly don't know who that terrifying voice belonged to. The text ends at the exact precise millisecond our questions reach their absolute peak. By declaring the end right after explicitly stating that the mystery won't be solved, the author masterfully locks the door and throws away the key. They are intentionally trapping the viewer in a permanent state of unresolved tension. So this really leaves us to ponder the true nature of the source material. When the camera finally stops recording, does the mystery actually end? Or does it just begin in our minds? The physical evidence has stopped. The digital file is completely over. But because of how those 5 lines were so perfectly engineered, moving from a cold, mechanical start to slowing down time with a ringing bell and finishing with a direct psychological taunt, the story actually survives way past its own final word. It hijacks your imagination and forces you to do the rest of the heavy lifting. The real horror, the true climax, doesn't actually happen on the page or on the screen. It happens entirely in your head. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll leave you with that thought to echo in the dark.